Yo, what's good, y'all? It's your boy Weez back with another Sparking Zero video. So in today's video, I'm gonna be telling you guys 3 things that I want in Sparking Zero for the next update. So the first change that I really want is for them to change how super counters work. I believe that super counters should reset to neutral. I've made multiple videos talking about super counters, so I'm not gonna really go in depth, but I'm just gonna give you, some few explanations. So right now, in this current meta, key is everything. All right. That's why, like, right now, like, androids and regen characters are so powerful because these, when you're using android, you got infinite key, and if you're using, regen characters, you gain key, you gain health, right? And that's a problem because if it's like that, neutral game doesn't really matter. All right. Let's say if I'm fighting an android player and I manage to win neutral, right? If that android player managed to super counter me, I'm the one that's gonna get punished because 9 times out of 10, an android player is gonna have more key than I do. Same goes with regen characters like full power Jiren, UI sign, the MUI. For instance, if you manage to win neutral against these players that's using these characters, it really doesn't matter because if these players super counters you, they're gonna have more key and then you're gonna get punished. Now, a counter argument that you can make to this is that you could always super counter, but that's the problem, right? The super counter timing is always changing. The super counter timing is never the same for every player, right? For one player it's gonna be early, for the next player it's gonna be really late, and for you to actually be able to know the timing, you have to take damage first, and that just doesn't make sense. And characters like MUI, full power Jiren, Gogeta, Vegito, they do a lot of damage off of follow-ups. We're talking about 10k damage, right? Just by pressing triangle 4 times. That's a lot of damage. In higher ranks, it's all about super counters. And you guys could actually watch my fights when I'm fighting Speedy. You guys see the most of our fights is just about super counters, super counters. We barely, neutral game really doesn't matter, when we fight each other. And having super counter battles, it is fun at times, but it's usually redundant, all right? And it's at least for me, most of the time it's not fun. Okay, it's just not fun. I hate fighting players where it's all comes down to super counters, and it's even less fun if you're fighting a player and you just don't know their timing. All right, like imagine fighting an android player or a regen character who gains health, gain key, and then they super counters you and they have more key, so you're forced to super counter them, but you really can't because you don't know their timing. So it's really not fun to deal with. So yeah, I really hope after this update they change how this mechanics work, and they reset it to neutral. Alright, the next change that I want for this next update is for them to remove regen characters. Now, like right now, if you guys didn't know, right, no matter how high your character DP is, right, he's gonna have the same health bar as a low DP character, right? For instance, right, MUI Goku's gonna have the same health bar as a Master Roshi, for instance. However, right, if you use a weaker form of this character, for instance, if I'm using UI sign and I transform to MUI, I'm gonna be able to gain an extra health, and it just doesn't make sense. All right. Before this patch, a lot of players, a lot of people quit because of that, right? They were complaining about the fact that some characters have more health and they do more damage, and it didn't feel fun. But after this update, it really didn't change because it's basically the same, right? And I'd even say it's even worse because now it's like when you're fighting a player who's able to transform, the regen, that player not only gains health, but he has a full key gauge, and in my opinion it's just completely unskillful. I literally got myself in top 30 just by doing that. There was one day I just got bored of it. I was just irritated, and I tried using UI sign to MUI, and the game just felt so easy for me. It just felt so easy, and it's like and I'm not really doing much. All I'm doing is just regenning, and that's just not fun to like. It's not fun. All right. This game, I understand this game's supposed to be a Tenkaichi game. The game shouldn't be balanced. I agree, but they're just things that just doesn't make sense. For instance, right? Why on earth fusions have less health than characters like MUI Goku, right? That's able to transform. Like, it doesn't make sense. So it's like they need to change that. It's just not fun to deal with. All right, so the last thing I want this game to change is the ranking system. All right, the rank system. After this update, they did major progress, right? If you have a good amount of win streak, you're able to gain more points, and that's cool. But this is still rank right now still have issues, right? So for instance, if you're a high Z rank, right? For instance, you're in the top 50, top 40, top 10, whatever. If you're fighting S ranks, you'll gain 0 points. And no matter how good your win streak is, if you're fighting an S rank and you're a high Z rank, you gain 0 points after beating that S rank. While if that S rank beats you, you lose at least 500 points, and that's just not it just doesn't make sense. and I think that they should actually add base points. Basically, if you fight an S rank, you gain at least this amount of points. All right. For instance, I gained 50 or 70, or that actually it's still not a lot, but at least now you gain something from ringing. Because now, right now, currently, it's just like last season. Last season, you weren't really gaining points from fighting S rank if you were a higher rank. But in this season, it's also the same thing. All right. If I'm fighting an S rank, right now I'm currently top 50, and I get 0 points from fighting S ranks. And what I do is just I close app. There are times where I literally just close app. And I know it might not be the right thing to do, but it's like I'm not trying to put myself to this, right? Like I want to actually gain something from beating you, right? If I gain nothing from beating you, but you gain everything, I'm just not gonna play you. You know what I mean? So yeah, these are the 3 things that I want this game to change for the next update. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. But anyways, thanks for watching, and I'm out.